And you will have 3 minutes to present on the topic.
Thank you.
The topic is reproductive choice, a right to life.
Thank you very much. Thank you for that question, because this is obviously very controversial, but I have to say that I think that the federal government or any government has no business being in between a woman and her healthcare provider and her reproductive rights. I could have 3 minutes on that, but I will tell you, I don't need 3 minutes on it, and thank you very much.
Thank you. I'm not going to worry about you going over your quota of time. Okay, Ms. Tenney, you'll have 2 minutes to respond.
As a woman and a single mother, I'm pro-life. I think every effort should be made to protect an unborn child, our most innocent human being in society. Every life is worth protecting. Like the majority of Americans, I don't support late-term abortion. I don't support federal funding of late-term abortion. I do support the exceptions, which are abortions in the case of rape, incest, and the life of the mother. Though people should know that's only 1% estimated of all the abortions that we have in the United States. I think it's a really important issue. I think it's an issue based on ethics. I think it's something about our culture. If we have a culture where we feel that people are disposable, I think that says a lot about who we are. I know that this is an issue that's tough. I mean, Roe versus Wade was passed. If Roe versus Wade were overturned today, it would become a state issue, and likely many of the states would allow it. But personally, I think that, and as a lawyer, it's a states' rights issue in some ways. But I also think it's about life, and it's about who we are as a nation. We certainly don't want to emulate China, and when they once had their, one-child policy and pushed abortions and eliminating human beings from the earth. It's easy to rationalize the death of a human being, but I don't think in the case of the most innocent that it's something that we should be cheering about. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Tenney. Mr. Babinick, you have 2 minutes to respond.
I'm also one that supports the rights of the unborn and would definitely say that we should not be using federal tax dollars for abortions, and believe that things, especially like late-term abortions, were put to even overall, the polls would show that the vast majority of Americans would see the value of that as well. It is an emotional issue, a controversial issue. It's one that divides our nation, but it is currently based on the Roe versus Wade decision, and it's the law of the land that abortions are permitted, and until there's a constitutional change or a different decision made by the Supreme Court, that will be the law of the land. But my vote, if I am in Congress and have to vote on what happens with federal funding for abortions, I would be in favor of not using federal dollars for abortions.
Thank you very much, Mr. Babinick. Ms. Myers, you have up to 2 minutes to respond.
Yes. Thank you very much. And again, to me, it's very clear-cut. The Supreme Court has ruled it is the law of the land. As a mother of 6 children, 3 of them are daughters, and actually 3 of them are adopted from China. We're a long way from China, and I don't think we'll get there by upholding the Supreme Court decision.
Are you finished? Oh, that's quite all right. I didn't want to cut you off. Thank you very much. Okay, so at this point, Mr. Babinick, you may respond for 1 minute.
I don't have any more to add to what I said.
Nothing more? Ms. Tenney? Nothing more? And Ms. Myers, do you want to make any final response? Okay, very good. So now we'll go on to the second question, which will be addressed to Claudia Tenney. And if you could please go to the podium. And the topic is personal and corporate federal tax reform.
Favorite topic. Actually, I think this is really important. First of all, one thing people should understand is probably most corporations and throughout the country are now using what they call pass-through tax relief, which means their corporations are LLCs or they're what we're known as S corporations, which means their personal tax, income tax is where the taxes are applied. I think that we should reduce the personal income tax on the federal level. I have a bill in the state assembly to reduce it on the state level. I think we should reduce it on the federal level. It is a proven winner in every state that is succeeding across the nation. States that use this as their centerpiece, it's not the only initiative to try to regrow their economies, but the personal income tax reduction is the centerpiece. As far as corporate taxes, the United States has the highest taxes in the world when it comes to corporate tax. I would advocate for reducing that. I think I would get rid of a lot of the loopholes. Obviously, I think that tax credits in many cases are unfair, especially when many businesses that aren't getting corporate welfare in other forms, whether it's through, say, funds through a Startup New York program or other programs through the federal government, they're at a huge disadvantage. Subsidies kill jobs, and sometimes tax relief is something that can help and bring the jobs back here. Right now, we are seeing, even in my family business, which does manufacturing in Sherburne, we've lost customers to Mexico because of trade deals that were negotiated where they've left this area. They've left the state of New York, they've left the country to go to Mexico or other countries for regulatory and tax relief. We can't have that happening in New York, or we're going to end up without any jobs here in our state, in our country. And I think that reducing taxes is one of the most important aspects of that. I think renegotiating the trade deals, I think NAFTA has proven to be a major disaster, something negotiated by Bill Clinton. The TPP, which is up for negotiation now, should not be passed in the current form that it's in. It undermines the sovereignty not only of our nation, it undermines the sovereignty of individual businesses who need access to foreign markets, but could be subjected to the World Court or other dictatorships and governments that aren't friendly to our nation. So there's a lot in tax policy, but I would start right out by reducing taxes in those ways and reduce a lot of the loopholes that we have. There are many loopholes that actually protect people who are profiting or profiteering off of our subsidies that they're given unfairly. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Tenney. Ms. Myers, you have 2 minutes to respond.
Thank you very much. You know the old saying, there's 2 things you can count on, death and taxes. And that's true. I do have to tell you that although no one likes paying taxes, I've had an experience, as I've mentioned, 2 of my children are adopted from China. When you go to a third world country, you have a little bit more appreciation. As my husband said when he came back, he said, I still don't think the government should waste our tax dollars by any means, but our tax dollars do go for a purpose. Our corporate tax dollars, and Ms. Tenney is correct, we have the highest corporate tax rate in the world. And whether that would be reduced would bring back jobs, I don't know. I hope so, that would be great, but you also have to close the loopholes. The loopholes where people do not pay their fair share of taxes. It's not right and it's not fair. We have a national stage where someone hasn't paid federal taxes for any number of years. That's not right. But we do have to help our middle class. The tax burden upon them is enormous. And we need a fair tax system that is fair to everyone, helps our middle class, protects those people that are struggling, but make sure that those who should be paying taxes are not getting away with loopholes and not paying their taxes. On a personal income tax level, we do have the highest personal income tax rate in New York State. People do go to other states to avoid paying personal income tax. That again, that's on a state level, not on a federal level. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Myers. Mr. Babinek, you have 2 minutes to respond.
Taxes affect our ability to create more jobs. If you have lower taxes, you will actually be able to create more jobs. How we go about that is definitely something that is negotiable. We know, for example, that our tax code is way too complicated. It's actually 77,000 pages. Only the attorneys and the tax lawyers are the ones that make money on this, I'll tell you. And of course, all the administrators in the IRS, the police. So it needs to be simpler. We also have as Ms. Tenney pointed out, small businesses are disadvantaged when they're a pass-through entity, meaning the small business and the owner of the small business file just a single tax return. When they pay more taxes, they have less to be able to invest for growth. This hurts jobs. I'm also concerned about the corporate tax rate. Our 35% is higher than the rest of the industrialized world, and as a result, we have billions, in fact, they say trillions of dollars parked outside the U.S. that if we even gave them a tax holiday and let them bring that money from overseas back in, we would get a lot of dollars into the Treasury. My proposal for that includes setting up a national infrastructure bank so that instead of just taking that money into the general fund, we allocate it specifically for the necessary infrastructure investments we know that we need to make here. So my goals again are tax simplification. Tax simplification will also help close loopholes and deductions that tilt the playing field towards the super wealthy and make it fairer. With a fairer tax, we can help even out that tax burden, and by reducing the corporate tax rate and address the pass-through issue that I mentioned with lower taxes, we can create more jobs. All of this is on my issues paper on the BabinetForCongress.com website.
Thank you, Mr. Babinet. Ms. Tenney, you have 2 minutes to respond to what's been said.
Thank you. I don't know if I have too much more to add. We pretty much covered the taxes, but obviously, making the tax code simpler, making it more business-friendly to small businesses that don't have the resources and the profits to outsource jobs, whether they're giving money to politicians and moving jobs overseas. I mean, I know what it's like. I mean, I run a small business here in central New York. We don't have any jobs outsourced to China and Hong Kong and in Mexico. We have to compete against them, and when our goods and services become under threat from jobs like that, companies like that are producing goods that are competing with us, you're going to continue to see that trade imbalance that we have, where we're producing so much less than we're taking in from foreign governments. And that trade imbalance has actually been magnified by the trade deals that have been passed. I specifically cited NAFTA. There's a Korean trade deal. There's a South Korean trade deal. Many of these deals have been disastrous for our jobs, and a lot of it has to do with taxes. It has to do with the inability of our small business community, our largest job producers, new job producers in the nation, to be able to compete. And it's something that we really need to look at seriously. It's something that, as a member of Congress, I'm hoping that I can be the voice for small business, especially a New York business. I don't plan on leaving. We're never going to be outsourcing or moving our goods and services somewhere else. And we're committed to our community. And I just think that it's something that we really need to talk about, because bring jobs back to New York with a lower tax rate. People are moving in droves to states like California, states away from California. Actually, Mr. Babinet just said that people were in California. There are actually more jobs that moved to Texas and Florida that have been created in California. So obviously, the personal income tax has impact, especially on young people, and we need to have them come back, and we need to have them stay here. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Tenney. Mr. Babinet, you have 1 minute to make a final response.
Maybe one other element. If you ever wonder, how is it we got to a 77,000-page tax code? It has to do with special interest contributions coming from these PAC funds and industry trade organizations that lobby to get carve-outs that are specific to a particular business or industry. And when you have so much money fueling the political process, one of the outcomes becomes this issue with taxes, and that's one of the reasons it's so much more complicated than it needs to be. So there is a connection between our tax code and the corruption that exists with the way campaign finance works, and something I'm pledged to help try to change.
Thank you, Mr. Babinet. Ms. Myers, you have 1 minute to make a final response.
Thank you very much. A lot of this talk about taxes is also talked about trade, and I couldn't agree. The TPP was negotiated without everybody at the table that needed to be at the table. But there are trade deals that need to be made that are beneficial to the United States and not beneficial to them and not hurting other parts. We need to be at the table, and we have to find out what goods do we produce here in the United States that we need to protect, and what goods don't we produce here in the United States that can offer a balance in trade. A balanced trade deal is what we need, and we agree with you wholeheartedly, Mr. Babinak, that we need to reduce the tax code to something that makes sense. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Myers. Ms. Tenney, you'll now have 1 minute to give your final response.
Yeah, I think we've hit the taxes, but I apologize for being a stickler on facts, but Mr. Babinak calls himself the unpolitician, but he sat on a board, National Association of Professional Employer Organizations, from time to time, which is one of the largest lobbying organizations, a special interest. They lobby for special interests, and his company has spent nearly $1 million lobbying politicians for what? For special treatment. That's what lobbyists do. So to sit there and accuse my other opponent and I of being the politicians and calling himself the politician is really the height of hypocrisy, and I really think that that's just unfair to tell the audience that you're not involved in PACs. Thank you.
Thank you. Now we'll get to the third audience-directed question that will be presented to Mr. Babinak. And if you would please go to the podium, I will read the question. You'll have 3 minutes to present on a very popular one in the news, and that is the future of Obamacare and healthcare.
Can't pass up the opportunity to at least say the truth. When you have a trade association does everything they can to help the members of their industry. Hence, the National Association of Professional Employer Organizations does just that. That's the organization that was referred to. Happy to have been a board member and helping my industry peers. I would also say that when it comes to companies, I am only a member of the board of directors and not responsible for APAC. But let me go on with the Affordable Care Act, because when we think of what is important for healthcare, I realize that this particular piece of legislation, which I lobbied hard, yes, I was on Capitol Hill as part of the National Association of Professional Employer Organizations, discouraging the adoption of Obamacare. We saw it coming and felt this is going to be disadvantageous to both small businesses and many individual lives. And as a result, we were successful with that in stopping it. But we fought hard because we knew the way it was organized, it was only going to result in increasing costs, as has proven to be the case. In order for us to address the fundamental reasons why healthcare keeps rising faster than general inflation, you have to look at the underlying drivers for it, and that is the amount of federal intervention into the healthcare system. The amount of regulation and the amount of federal involvement ends up restricting competition. And you know, as consumers, whenever you're buying something, if you have the opportunity to make a purchase and choose among several different sources who are competing for your business, that's how you get a good deal. In particular, if you have the opportunity to shop and get a lot of information about your choices. And within healthcare, that's something that's not nearly as transparent and easy to do as it should be with all the capabilities that we have. So my view about healthcare includes really putting more emphasis on directing things that allow more choice for businesses who sponsor healthcare plans, and also more choice for consumers who are maybe buying their own if they're not part of an employer. And as you know, in our economy today, we're actually increasing the number of smaller businesses and people working as independent contractors, or in what they call the gig economy, with a combination of different roles, people not falling into the traditional employer setup, needing the right kind of healthcare access that is lower cost and appropriate for their needs. I encourage the opportunity for both businesses and consumers to buy
Thank you, Mr.
healthcare across
Babinak.
the
Your
state
time is
lines.
up.
Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Tenney, you have 2 minutes to respond.
Yeah, Obamacare has probably been the biggest burden on our family business. We, at one point, employed 80 people. Since Obamacare, we are now down to under 70, just because of the continuously increasing costs Now, we run a business in a rural area, and that's often, it's tough, but we provide a very good health care to our employees with a lot of options, a lot of plan, and it's just that the price is so outrageous that our healthcare exchanges in New York have been imploding and causing huge problems for employers. I would try to do everything I could to not only eliminate Obamacare, I'd like to defund it and start over. We did have a great healthcare system with some flaws. I'd rather correct the healthcare system that we had, make sure that people with pre-existing conditions are covered, make sure that our Medicaid isn't overblown and overworked, which it is in New York. We have the highest Medicaid budget of any other state in the nation. California is 36 million, we're 19 million. New York State is, our per capita costs are more than California and Texas combined. That's as a direct result of the imposition of Obamacare. Many people, when we did the healthcare exchanges in New York, immediately were put onto Medicaid because of the healthcare. Now we have a system where people do not have a relationship with their doctor anymore. Many have lost it. Many of the cost is very high. And I want to say just one other thing. I know Mr. Babinett, and I apologize, but I'm a stickler for the truth. I go to New York State Assembly, and I try to tell the truth about what's going on. And the Young Politician was actually the largest donor to a man named Scott Murphy. And Scott Murphy was one of the biggest champions of Obamacare, and he said he was fighting it, but he maxed out his donations to Mr. Scott Murphy, who was then the congressman after he voted for Obamacare. And let me quote a Twitter feed from Mr. Babinett that says, "As bad as overregulation is for our U.S. economy, it sure is a never-ending force fueling TriNet, his company's growth."
Your time is up.
That was in reference to their Obamacare. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Myers, you have 2 minutes to respond.
Thank you very much. I prefer to talk about the issue, and the Affordable Health Care Act is not perfect by any means. There has been many unintended consequences. But do I fundamentally think in the United States of America, every individual should have access to quality, affordable health care? I do. And as a divided Congress just keeps pointing the finger at each other, we need to get back to the table, find out what's working, what's not working. What can we do to fix it? What can we make it work for everyone? Yes, and even as a business, I know how our healthcare premiums have skyrocketed. I do know people who have been helped tremendously by the Affordable Health Care Act. We have to find a balance between that. We also have to look at what is causing the rise in our healthcare costs. And the truth of the matter is, some of it is good. We have the highest cost of healthcare that we spend on because we have more complex and technological tests that we have for individuals. As a result, the United States has the best survival rate for cancer. We have to balance everything, and we've got to make sure that it works for everyone. One of the things that I do know about the Affordable Health Care Act that was not something I think anybody really thought about was how some of our public schools and our public school teachers have a good health care system. Well, under the Affordable Health Care Act, that qualifies as a Cadillac plan. I don't think anybody expects our public schools to pay an additional couple $1 million a year for our teachers' health care. They just don't have the money if we want to achieve the objectives that we want to achieve in education. So really, we need to look at what's working, what's not. If we call it something else, who cares? As long as it's not Affordable Health Care Act, it's not Obamacare, if it's something else and it works for everybody,
your time is up.
That's what we need to do. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Mr. Babinett, you may take 2 minutes to respond.
The solutions that I think about for healthcare include, in line with providing more choice, giving you the opportunity to make purchases of healthcare across state lines. Under our current arrangement, here in New York State, you can only buy a New York State licensed policy. And yet, there are other policies across the border or in other states across the country that could be right in line with your needs and be very appropriate, especially if we set some federal minimum standards for the whole country. Having more choice will help bring more options and at the same time bring down costs. Very important. I'm also in favor of the FASO plan, a candidate for Congress in a neighboring district, to address the Medicaid problem. Because what happens with Medicaid We have in New York State very high standards for what New York State requires for Medicaid, higher than many other states, and that's why we have so many dollars invested in Medicaid, as was pointed out earlier. And the way we can address that is that right now under the current arrangement, the state government passes the high standards and then forces it down to the county level. And the county, of course, this becomes your number one line item in the county budget. This is why your property taxes are so high. So my proposal, or John Fassel's proposal, which I support, says that that must make it not an unfunded mandate as it currently is in New York State, but if the state sets a standard, let it be funded through the state. That would make a very big difference in our Medicaid costs. I'm also in favor of increasing the transparency of information we as consumers need to make intelligent choices about our health care. There's not enough information about outcomes. You want to shop for a procedure and you're comparing what are the different physicians and surgeons or whatever the procedure might be. There is not yet a way that you can do that easily across multiple providers outside of an existing network that might have some of those capabilities. This is something that standard setting can be done.
Your time is up. Thank you. Okay. So, Ms. Myers, you have 1 minute for a final response.
Thank you. The broad subject of healthcare is very complex, and as I said, someone who's a board of director for Lourdes Hospital in Binghamton, I have the opportunity to see multiple sides of it. And it is a multiple-sided problem. And number one that we have to do also, and whether it's right or wrong, in certain protocols are being required of providers, that they do have an outcome-based. And I think it's appropriate that we be proactive instead of reactive. We're looking at what is causing some of these long-term diseases such as diabetes, heart disease, and starting way back earlier to make sure that people that first have the symptoms get the appropriate care so it doesn't become a long-term condition which costs astronomical amounts. So that's one way to look at it or to deal with it. And I do definitely believe that we need to make sure that it's fair for everybody and we don't hurt small businesses, but we don't leave people with no health care and no option for their health.
Thank you. Ms. Tenney, you have a minute for a final response.
Thank you. Many people are bailing on Obamacare, the former supporters. It passed on completely partisan lines. There isn't a single Republican in the national government that supported it. In order to put Obamacare in place, we eliminated a very popular Medicare Advantage plan. $156 billion was taken out of that program, another $700 billion taken out of Medicare that our seniors desperately need. My parents were both dependent on Social Security and Medicare, and for that program, the Medicare program, to be gutted has made it very difficult and very complex for health care for many seniors across the state and across this country. And that's a reason we need to go back to the drawing board and make sure we ensure that Medicare and Social Security are going to be there for the people that we've promised it to. And Obamacare is not the solution. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Babinick, you may make a final response.
Healthcare is something that affects us all, and it is an area that the federal government has entirely too much of a hand in. That's the reason our costs have gone up so much. Reducing the amount of federal intervention is what we need to do, and allowing us to get the information we need so that we can be smarter shoppers, have more choices, so that we can bring the costs down will be the solutions that I'll be fighting for on healthcare reform.
Okay, thank you very much. Do we have time for one more question? Charlie? Okay. Do you have the straws? Do you have the straw? We need to draw straws. One more question. We were prepared to do 3, but we have a little extra time. We're going to move forward. How we'll work this for the presenter
ask each one of you to select the straw. One gets the longest one will be the presenter. Still, we will follow the same format of everyone having a chance to respond. Sorry about that.
I remember the longest one.
Ms. Myers said you did the longest one. Okay. So, Ms. Myers, can you go to the podium, please?
We'll do the fourth audience ask question. And this is a popular one, the role of money in politics. Please take 3 minutes.
Thank you very much. I can definitely take 3 minutes on this one. Clearly, the role of money in politics is a huge issue. The cost to run for office is astronomical, and it's been driven by a Supreme Court ruling called Citizens United. Citizens United needs to be overturned, and we need to get back to where we can have reasonable elections that cost a reasonable amount of money. I know I've worked very hard on my campaign. When I, not necessarily when I got into it, I would think I was already into it. And a person who had run for this position said, back maybe 10 years ago, maybe not even that long ago, that a congressional race like this should cost about $300,000. Now it's going to cost $3, $4, $5 million. It depends on how much money super PACs decide to put into the race for or against a candidate. Most people don't understand what a super PAC is. And in a super PAC, the candidate has zero control over it. They cannot have any coordination. They cannot have any contact with that PAC whatsoever. That is money that's spent either for you, against you, that you can't do anything about. And that needs to be changed, and that would be changed with Citizens United. We've worked really hard on our campaign to raise money, and our average donation, 75% of our average donations are less than $100. I believe that you need to have people that are invested in you because of who you are and because how you're going to represent them, not because of what they think you're going to do for them. Super PACs are a problem, and I would be all in favor of looking at an alternative to run campaigns that are not run by huge amounts of money or even cost huge amounts of money, even if you can raise that. It seems like a colossal waste of money that everybody could be doing much better things with that amount of dollars that are spent on campaigns. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Myers. And Ms. Tenney, will you please respond for 2 minutes?
Yes, well, Citizens United, there was a lot of money in politics long before Citizens United, just a few years ago. What Citizens United is, the Supreme Court decided that it was a First Amendment right to engage in a campaign. Super PACs are allowed to spend money, and they have the right to do that, just as unions and many other special interest groups are allowed to do it. Money in politics. I love this topic because I was a member of the State Assembly, and I've mostly self-funded all of my campaigns. My last campaign, I spent about $7,000 out of my own pocket. Both of my opponents are not going to, they're substantially wealthier than I am. You know, both, so I don't know what the range is, but it's a lot. It's anywhere between $50 and $150 million, or maybe they can tell you. The problem is that you have to run on ideas, and that's the way that I've been able to survive in politics. I ran with very little money in 2010 against a person with a lot more money than I did. I was redistricted into the largest district created in the history of New York that was calculated to eliminate me because I am the voice for truth in Albany, and I'm willing to stand up against the corruption. And you know, to get reelected is hard. I was outspent in this primary $2.5 million to $200,000. I'm going to be outspent by both of my opponents substantially, likely, in this race. You know, I don't like the ads either, and I know that Kim doesn't have any control of the ads, but they're disgusting. I have senior citizens coming to me every day, you know, saying, why didn't you show up to vote? I have one of the best records in the State Assembly. I have a great attendance record, plus I work harder than anyone else because I have a district that's longer than this congressional district. I've never voted, and this is actually a Kim Myers ad, I've never voted to raise taxes. I didn't vote for the against the largest middle class tax cut. I voted for the largest middle class tax cut in 58 years, but yet there's an ad running, with lots of money being spent by independent, actually it's not a PAC ad, saying that I did that. These are calling me an Albany insider. Let me tell you something. No Albany insider would pick a nearly 200-mile assembly district, okay? So I am not an Albany insider, but that's what you get.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Mr. Babbitt?
This is a topic I love, all right? How did we get here? We got here because the two parties have way too much control over this whole process. And the reason it's so dysfunctional now, more than ever before, is that the politicians have created an arrangement where, as a result of low voter turnout in the primaries, like in this district, by the way, the federal primary, there were only 13% of Republicans turned out to vote. Low voter turnout in the primary means only the people that are the angriest turn out, and that's to the extreme. On both sides, left and right. You layer on top of that gerrymandered districts where the politicians who are in charge of deciding where the boundaries are, and we lose, as we have in the last 10 years, 1 million people in upstate New York, just in 10 years. We'll redraw the districts again. Who's in charge? The politicians. What do? They create these safe seats so that they can get reelected. If you were running for Congress in 2014, your odds of being reelected as a congressman is 95%. That's what's wrong with this picture. That's what causes the politicians to go far to the left or far to the right, because that's where they can get the money from the special interest PAC funds. And this is separate from the dark money that was mentioned earlier with super PACs. That's where politicians get their money to run. The system is broken. As an independent candidate, I had the opportunity to help change that. Not only because I am not beholden to those special interests, and I am self-funding the campaign. I've been blessed, I've lived the American dream, I'm giving back to try to make that difference. But I truly believe other people will be following me as an independent, and this is how we will bring the two parties closer together. Because right now it's too hard for third parties to win. This is the only race in the entire country where a third party member could actually get elected to Congress. I want to do that for you.
Thank you. Your time is up. Okay, Ms. Myers, you have 2 minutes to respond to what's been said.
Thank you very much. I didn't get a chance to mention this, and probably because I forgot, but I'd like to encourage anybody to go to my website, because I am all about everything on my campaign must be the truth. When it comes from me, it is the truth. And that's why I instill on our website a fact check page. Anything that comes out of my campaign will have a fact check on it. And as far as being outspent, I agree. I don't think it matters. Hopefully, it's not who spends the most amount of money. I appreciate Mr. Babinak's self-funding, and I agree with him. As someone who's been blessed, what he does with his money is totally his own business. I've done the middle of the road. I've invested in myself, because I think if somebody's going to invest in me, I should also invest in myself. But my opponent is, if I'm outspent, it's going to be about the super PACs that are supporting and doing ads against my opponent. So here we are. Here we are in a mess that finance is making a huge difference in campaigns, and it shouldn't. It should be about the candidates. It should be about people in our electorate looking at the individual candidates. What do they represent? What are they going to do for us? And what are they going to do in Congress? And who is going to be our representative? Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Mr. Babinett, you have 1 minute to respond, your final response.
Ultimately, when you make your vote for Congress, the 3 things that matter the most is having someone that has the mind, the heart, and the soul to represent you. The mind to sort through all the different choices on where we would have to spend our time and make the right choices, because there's a lot of stuff that needs to be done. The heart to really sort through and think about making decisions on behalf of people that don't necessarily look like us and come from very different circumstances. But most importantly, the soul. The soul to make the right choice, do what's right without regards to party bosses, party ideology, or special interest funding. I want to be beholden only to the voters and work for you.
Thank you. Ms. Tenney, you may speak.
That sounds like an endorsement of me. Let me first say that, let me just say, Kim, you approved this message. It says that I voted against the largest middle class tax cut. I did not. I voted for it, and it was in December of 2011. I greatly appreciate it. That's your ad. That's not a super PAC ad, if you would correct that ad. It's a well-documented act. You don't need to go to somebody's personal Facebook page or website to fact check it. Another thing is, I've been voted against the grain. I've always been underfunded. I haven't been endorsed. I've never been endorsed by the Republican Party in my own home county, and yet I've won primaries in four or five different elections, and just getting elected since 2010. Mr. Babinett describes the people that voted for me in the primary as angry. I guess we have more deplorables out there voting. And as far as gerrymander districts, NY 22 was decided by a federal judge. It was not decided by politicians. So there wasn't any gerrymandering in this district. And I think that, I'm happy that they're both successful in making a lot of money. So I don't have anything against it.
Okay, Ms. Myers, you may make a final response for up to 1 minute, please.
Thank you. I couldn't agree more that people need to make their decision based on the candidate, and hopefully they will. Actually, the 22nd is one of the areas, as Mr. Babinett said, about the gerrymandering and how it's very hard to unseat an incumbent in Congress and most elected officials. But this is a seat in the 22nd that has flipped many times from Republican to Democrat. We have moderate people here, and I'm actually very proud of the people of the 22nd because they actually do seem to look at the individual and vote for the person. And I would appreciate their vote.
Okay, thank you very much. At this stage, we are going to wrap up the debate. We'll be concluding. And I will ask the candidates to make closing statements. We'll go in alphabetical order. They'll each have 2 minutes to do that. And Mr. Babinett, will you please make your closing statement?
Thank you for having me here this evening and coming out to learn more about the voters, what the candidates have to offer. I really appreciate your being here. You can see that there is a contrast between the candidates, and you have an important decision to make in front of you. One of the sayings that I think probably applies here is past performance is an indicator of future success. And you do want to look at not just words, but what actions, what has actually been accomplished by any candidate that you look at. And would hope that when it comes to especially the high priority of our finding a path to restore economic vitality, that we know in our hearts our best chance lies with our next generation. Our next generation that has a different set of values, the ability to embrace a lot of opportunities in these newer industries, and instead of waving goodbye to them, the opportunity to keep them here so that they can help us rebuild our future in a way that I think is very exciting. I'm quite optimistic about what lies ahead. And while policy decisions and sponsoring policy is a very important part of a congressman's role, I feel the other 2 pillars of constituent service and giving people and organizations and local governments the help that they need in navigating through the federal bureaucracy is a second pillar that's important, but it is that third pillar of leadership, of convening the right parties to bring about change, and change in the area of jobs, as I've been able to do over these last 6 years and starting and running a nonprofit that's helped hundreds of entrepreneurs start companies in these new industries that will make a difference in restoring our economic vitality. My plan is to do that at the congressional level, because I will have a greater power to convene than what I can do today in this small nonprofit. I ask for your vote on November 8th.
Thank you, Mr. Babinett. Ms. Myers, will you please give your closing remarks?
Thank you very much. Again, I also appreciate everybody being here. I know everybody's time is valuable, and it proves that you are very interested in having someone that's going to represent you adequately. I hope to be that person. I believe that I have the right priorities for upstate New York. I've lived here my whole life. I I love it here. I want my children to be raised here as well. Whether it's advocating for small businesses, making sure Social Security and Medicare are protected, it doesn't really matter what the issue is you have to do the right thing. And for me, as a person who's running, I really don't care if it's a Democratic idea or if it's a Republican idea. If it's the right idea and it's a good idea for the 22nd, we need to sit down with anybody and everybody and get to the right decision. And then also make sure that you have the right stakeholders in place and advising you, which would mean the people in the 22nd. Tell us what you think, what you're worried about, what's affecting your lives, so that somebody that's representing you can go to the table with all the facts. As a school board member for 18 years and as a Broome County legislator now, I have a reputation of I didn't make any decision until I researched it thoroughly, backwards, forwards, inside out, and made sure that I knew all the facts. I made sure I knew what all the consequences are and what all the ramifications are. And that's what I'll do when I go to Congress as well. And you need somebody who's going to have really just common sense. We need people that are just not going to be about party lines. They're not going to be about individual self-interest. They're not going to be about wanting grandeur for yourselves. That's why I don't plan on being there for the rest of my life. We do need term limits because, as that social studies teacher taught me, that our forefathers brought forth this country and you were supposed to serve and go home. The operative word in that being serve. I promise that I will serve every single constituent in the 22nd, and I won't let you down. And I ask for your vote. Thank you.
Thank you. Claudia Tenney, will you please close?
Thank you. I just want to say thank you to everyone in the Hamilton community for being part of my life and for allowing my family to really enjoy a wonderful, idyllic life with Colgate University as well. My grandfather helped to found the hospital, he helped to found the golf courses, he was very instrumental in this community, and he gave back. And I actually only recently read his obituary, and it was about service. It said that my grandfather, Robert Roberts, was somebody who achieved some of the highest positions in government and refused to take any kind of patronage job or money for it. And I'd like to say that I'm going to be living in the same lifestyle as my grandfather and emulate him. Giving back to my community. But one of the things that's important about this is a job for Congress. It's about advocacy, and it's about being a legislator. And when you're a legislator, you need to advocate for the people that you represent. And what that means is you take that message to Washington, and when you get there, if you have to compromise on some of your principles, you do, but you work out a solution that doesn't hurt your community. And it has to deal with the Constitution. Everything has to be constitutional. And government has various roles. There's the state government, there's the federal government, and then there's the local government. On the federal level, we need to understand that we are a self-governing republic. It's a constitutional republic. It's not a democracy, per se. And what we do is we need to have people who are going to participate in government and vote. This district is what they call an R3. It is the most Republican district in the state other than the district in the Buffalo area that's currently being held by Chris Collins. This was created in 2012. It hasn't, the only occupant of this district ever has been Richard Ham. It was created in 2012, as I said, by a federal judge. So that being said, this district really is a business-oriented farm community. A lot of rural businesses, small metro areas like Binghamton, the Utica-Rome area that are suffering. They need help. And these cronyist schemes and pay-to-play schemes are not helping. We need somebody who's going to empower our farmers and our small business community. It's something I've done and I will do as your member of Congress, and I appreciate your vote and your time. Thank you.
Thank you very much. This concludes the debate this evening. We greatly appreciate the audience here, and we hope that what you've heard tonight will help you in your decision in making a vote. One of the three will certainly be our representative in Congress, and we wish all of them the best of luck. We applaud all of them for their commitment to public service and for actually making a campaign. It's not an easy thing to do. It's a great investment of time and money, and we understand that. We're just, again, very thankful that you came and you shared your thoughts with us, and again, we wish you the best of luck. I also want to extend a thanks to our debate coordinator, Charlie Neff. He is Charlie Neff is a retired political science professor from Colgate University. He really has a passion for public forums and candidates nights, and he did a great deal of behind the scenes work in connecting with all the campaign managers and so forth. There's a lot that you don't see that goes on behind the background to make all this work. So thank you again, Charlie, for that. At this point, I would like to ask Reverend Wesley Smith to please conclude the debate tonight.
Candidates, look over it, because I want to thank each one of you for being here tonight, as David said. And I want to just echo David's words in thanking Charlie for his phenomenal job of putting this all together. This Hamilton Forum group is a very active group. Every member of the Forum Committee is a participating member. And the next Hamilton Forum between Assemblyman Bill McGee and Supervisor John Salka, who is here this evening, will take place at the Colgate Inn on October 27th at 7 p.m. And you will also want to mark your calendars for Thursday morning, November 3rd at 7:30 a.m. when the Hamilton Forum welcomes Dr. David E. Rogers, the 8th president of Morrisville State College, SUNY, and come and enjoy coffee and conversation with Dr. Rogers at 7:30. That's Thursday, November 3rd at the Colgate Inn. I understand that in the foyer of the school this evening, there will be a 10 or 15 minute period for you to meet and greet and perhaps ask a personal question of our three candidates. But again, on behalf of Hamilton Forum and Hamilton Rotary, thank you all, informed voters, and good night.